Hey guys, Sleepy Reader back with some thoughts on more of my comics from this week. Dial H was another kind of. This was maybe a little less confused than they have been in the past. Maybe it was actually helped by this more standard comic book art by David Lapham. Lapham. Let me see what's his name. Anyway, it had more standard art, and it was a little less confused, but it wasn't a terribly interesting story. I'm sorry, David Lapham. Or Lapham. I don't know. Nelsie turned into a stereotypical American Indian full of stereotypes of the past. And so Manto convinced him not to go out and fight, and he sits around the living room sort of chatting with her and watching TV, and that's the issue. Sort of a clever idea, but it just somehow wasn't that interesting. I'm not sure that although this American Indian superhero was kind of stereotyped, it could have been pushed further to make it more convincing why they wouldn't want him to go out. There's kind of one cool scene where his winged horse is out and stops a crime in a way only a winged horse might be able to do. Think about when you're walking on a trail where horses have been before you, what's left behind. An interesting side note is I was reading this and my daughter was like, "What are you reading?" And I told her about it, and she was really interested in the whole Dial H for Hero idea. And I happened to have this thing that I bought for 50 cents about 6 months back and hadn't read. And I assumed it was a reprint, just judging from the cover, a reprint of a Silver Age Dial H for Hero. But on the inside is actually a Mark Waid, Barry Kitson updating from 2000 of Dial H for Hero. And my daughter enjoyed it quite a bit. It doesn't have a whole lot of edge to it, and it seemed to be tying into some large crossover about the Justice League of America at the time. But it was fun enough, and surprised me. I guess I thought by 2000 the sort of state of comic book art was more advanced than it is here. So all this fancy coloring and everything that we have was not around 12 years ago at all. And it's on much cheaper paper. And they were charging $2.50 for comics. So when you really think about it, a $3 comic book, which with much better paper, much better coloring, is not a bad deal 12 years down the road. So yeah, to me it didn't seem much different than you might expect a DC comic from the 70s or the 80s to be. So that was an interesting experience reading. But Dial H for Hero, it really is one of those superheroes ideas that is ideal for small children. Children love superheroes. They love the powers and the costumes. They don't need the complex psychology. Just like my daughter loves, for the same reason my daughter loves the Legion of Superheroes. So I might see if I can actually dig up some of the Silver Age Dial H for Hero to read with her. Because Lord knows I need something to read with her. So yeah, I'll go from that to Stormwatch, which was interesting. Stormwatch continues to be on an upswing. I think Pete Milligan has found his feet on this book, and the art is quite decent by Will Conrad. It's not like the most emotionally expressive artwork or atmospheric artwork. It's more sort of solid, old-fashioned superhero artwork, but a fairly pleasing, detailed version of that. So we get a lot of action. We get the demon Etrigan from the Demon Knights being totally evil. We get some fun connection between Demon Knights and Stormwatch. It's all handled pretty well. And we still have, sort of left over from Paul Cornell and other writers, all this sort of dangling mystery about Stormwatch and their shadow council that runs them and why anyone would want to be a member of Stormwatch and stuff. But it seems like Milligan's finally beginning to explore some of that. So I continue to be on board for Stormwatch. It's kind of a solid book, and when I'm reading superhero teams, I kind of like the ones that they're outsiders, they're outside of the system, they're full of moral ambiguity, etc. You know, it's fun for me to read, and I really enjoy the couple of Apollo and Midnighter, and it's going to be really cool to see. They've just been told that they can no longer fraternize with each other by their leader, and it's going to be fun to see what their reaction to that is. So yay, Stormwatch. And then, of course, I've read Deadpool. My take on it is basically this is the very first Deadpool I've read. And I've gathered, in the past that, Deadpool is a humorous character and very violent. That's all I sort of knew about him. I didn't even realize he was like Wolverine and he can regenerate his body parts and such. So anyway, what I took this to be is basically a Mad Magazine of the Marvel, a Mad Magazine version of the Marvel Universe. The art even has kind of a little bit of Jack Davis from old Mad Magazine and a little bit of Mort Drucker and a lot of Marvel still. So it's an interesting synthesis of it. Tony Moore is a really good artist. I really like the art. I felt at times the coloring kind of almost obscured the art a bit. So I had two objections to it. One was the coloring, and I wanted to enjoy Tony Moore's artwork more. I just felt the colorist kind of did us a disservice by kind of doing too much on top of the artwork, because we've got such a great line artist, and I feel just from what I've read of Deadpool, it shouldn't be this heavily molded, let's pretend it's closer to reality kind of coloring. It should have a strong comic book quality. So that was the coloring bothered me, and the other thing that bothered me were the guts. It felt like Deadpool's guts were constantly falling out, and I guess I'm kind of squeamish. In fact, there was another, I talked about how I was grabbed by covers this week in my previous video. There was another cover that was kind of the opposite, a cover that utterly repelled me, and this relates to Deadpool because it was so gory, and it was called Colder, and I've heard it's a good comic book. It was a picture of a guy sticking his finger up through his skin from his mouth up to his eyeball with blood coming all over the place. And I was like, I can't even look at that picture. And I don't enjoy looking at guts. So Deadpool is just kind of a little more of a gross out there. He's vomiting in one picture, his guts are coming out in another. I think I will continue to pick up Deadpool. I thought it was full of funny one-liners. I'm not a big fan of puns, but those weren't bad. I liked that the jokes came from all the characters. I did feel we were in a jokey Marvel universe, not in the straight Marvel universe. And I enjoyed that, in the spirit of not brand Ech, or just the Mad Magazine. I love this, near the end of the book, we get this big spread of all the dead presidents gathering together, except there's Jimmy Carter. And he's saying, "But I'm not dead." I love that. Anything can happen, any kind of goofy thing for a joke, but there's still a story. And one of the other presidents, I don't know if it's LBJ, I guess it's supposed to be, says, "You're dead when we say you're dead, Jimbo." Yeah. And which president is this big fat one in the bathtub? I need to know. He's eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he's dead, and he's got a duck, and he's in a bathtub. That's hilarious. I mean, I think the writing is good, the art is fantastic, and the humor, the quality of the art being funny but really solid, detailed, good art at the same time is really great. Tony Moore should be a superstar. But ultimately, it's fun to read, occasionally read a book that's just all for chuckles, but I kind of prefer humor that's mixed in, melded in with a real story. So I like Deadpool, but I don't think it'll ever be my favorite, at least judging by this. But I'll keep getting it. And speaking of a favorite, Earth 2, number 6, did not disappoint at all. Great climax to the current arc. Great to see a full story told in 6 issues. It's funny to say that. I mean, once upon a time, you'd expect a full story every issue, and it seemed extended for 2. But anyway, I think James Robinson did a great job of bringing his cast together and telling a complete story in 6 issues. The trade is coming out in January, I saw, so anybody who hasn't been following this, I say get that trade. It'll be really good. Green Lantern, who was seeming like kind of a bland character at first, is now, in my mind, taking off as kind of an interesting character. He's the most powerful superhero in this Earth 2 universe. And I'm really interested to see what happens with him next, and with his relationship with the Flash and Hawkwoman, and possibly with the Atom. And maybe we'll be seeing some other heroes showing up quite soon. In fact, I'm sure we will. Very, very clever way they dealt with the Gray, their version of the Rot. So I'm really looking forward to more issues. I pray that this team stays on it. Nicola Scott and her inker, Trevor Scott, I wonder if they're related. They just do a fantastic job. Nicola Scott still just feels like the best superhero penciler at DC right now. I think she does great justice to Robinson's storylines. The coloring is really good. I think they still have the same colorist, Sinclair, I believe. Yeah, Alex Sinclair. So it's just a fantastic art team. I saw that at least for the January issue, so 2 issues from now, we'll not have Nicola Scott on it. I'm hoping that's just a brief fill-in. So, or maybe they're going to do every other arc or something like that. So anyway, yeah, highly recommend the upcoming trade, or if you've been following it, definitely make sure you get issue 2. The covers are by the guy who does Aquaman, very good artist, Ivan Rice. And they're good covers, but Ivan Rice covers are starting to all seem the same to me after a while. He's got kind of a certain kind of layout and shtick and almost expressions on the characters' faces he does on covers after a while. So it'd be great if Nicola Scott had some time to do her own covers too. But yeah, so a lot of very satisfying comic books this week. A lot. And there's 2 that I haven't even read yet of the 9 I got. I'm trying to think if there's... The only one I didn't really like was... or didn't really love, it wasn't painful to read, was Dial H. And then another great thing was Fatale. I read this entire trade today, got a little time off from parenting, and sat down at a cafe and just read this straight through. And I love the art by Sean Phillips, and Ed Brubaker sort of keeps us on the edge of our seat. So, and it reads perfectly as a trade. It's got chapters. I think if I had to read this spread out over the months, I might have lost track of the story a bit. So, and we get a fairly complete story or a fairly complete chapter in the Fatale story. The one thing I can see is Brubaker has just announced that he's going to turn this into an ongoing rather than a limited series. And part of what keeps you going through this is the mystery of what has been done to this woman or what she is. She's obviously doesn't age, and she has some kind of special power over men, and it was given to her by this cult who kind of follows a kind of Cthulhu-like unknown god. So the full nature of that is kind of the mystery that keeps you going, and you learn a teeny bit in this volume and in little dribs and drabs, and it's very fascinating. But in the end, you do want to learn it all. You want it all to be revealed, but once it's all revealed, the story's going to be over. That's your reason for keeping to read, I think. And so if he does it as an ongoing, are we forever going to be teased and never learn the answers? I have thought there are some authors that I've noticed this more in science fiction prose books I read. Some authors do what I call not a nesting of a reveal, a heightening of reveals. So you solve one mystery, and that only leads you to the next mystery. So then that the uncovering of what you think is the main mystery of the book or the series of books leads you to the next level of mystery and opens up the road to another mystery. So maybe Ed Brubaker can do something like that. But we'll see. I'll definitely follow this for a few volumes because I really enjoyed it. And if you've never experienced Sean Phillips doing this kind of his version of sort of film noir in comic books, it's marvelous. It's like all these perfect panels one after another, and yet he has also this kind of loose, rough style. It's both rough and very detailed and very polished, if that makes any sense. And one interesting, I think, because they don't credit a letterer, I think he's doing his own lettering. And he adds roughness here and there. The circles around the, if you look closely at them, the circles around the word balloons are not perfect. They're a little rough, and it's almost like they're done with a series of little lines. And the same in a different way with the caption boxes. If you start looking at a lot of, I can't find an example of it now, you can start finding places where the line in the caption box doesn't end at the corner. It keeps going, which adds a feeling of roughness. And occasionally you see little lines coming out of the edge of the panel on the other side, but just giving you that feeling of you're looking at a sketchbook or something, but like a sketchbook by the most marvelous artist you could ever imagine. And it's fantastically colored by someone who's known as a great colorist, Dave Stewart. I mean, because it's film noir, it all has this nighttime look, but the colors the colors never obscure the art, and they always add to the art and add flavor to the book. Yeah, I think it was Oddfellow of Thoughts who first told me Dave Stewart was like one of the kings of colorists, and this book is certainly evidence of that. So, yeah, it's, as all has been described by the author himself, it's film noir meets whatchamacallit, H.P. Lovecraft. But the H.P. Lovecraft stuff is kept in the background quite a bit, and there's kind of a nice tale within a tale kind of thing, and that might have been hard to keep track of if you were reading monthly issues, and a thing that worked really well by reading the whole trade at once. This trade was 5 issues. I would love, how they often in trades show you sketches in the back. I'd love to see more about Sean Phillips' artistic process, but all they show us are the covers of the 5 issues. And these are great covers. The actual cover to the trade is probably one of the weakest pieces of artwork, but it does tell you a lot about the story you're about to read. So yeah, I'm kind of I'm now on the edge of my seat waiting for the next trade of Fatale. Okay, guys, I've gone on, I see, for 20 minutes. So I'm going to go try and read these two comics and then go to bed. Talk to y'all later.